ladies and gentlemen, do welcome to the next episode of the Safe Bet Show, and it gives me great pleasure and privilege to have Emilia Kinderman with us today. She will be flying Fitzdares flag and sporting their colors. But before we move on to talk about Fitzdares, if I may, Emilia, first of all, welcome on the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And if I may, I would like to do a bit of a walk through your career in our beloved gambling industry so far. So I'm told, you kindly told me that you've started your career in the industry with the Rank Group. I suppose no need to introduce the Rank Group to anybody. And in your own words, and that's what caught my eye in your resume, while you were with Rank, you developed a deep understanding of the Middle Eastern and Asian customer base, of course, amongst other things. Clearly not the only thing you would have done there, but that sounds a bit unusual and potentially very cool. So would you care to tell us more about that?
Yes, thank you. Of course, that's a very, very important part to my gambling experience. My very first gambling experience, I started my gambling career as in gambling industry with the Barracuda Club on Baker Street in 2007, and I was a croupier back then. It was really a crazy casino world. Barracuda Club at the time was one of probably the best casinos in London, and not categorized as Mayfair, but had Mayfair clients and definitely Mayfair type games that we dealt to our customers, predominantly Middle Eastern Chinese clients. It was crazy busy and there were insane games we dealt to them. I remember I was this tiny 5'4", size 8 girl who couldn't get through to the table, amongst all the players. I remember shouting, "I'm the croupier, I want to get to the table, can you get me through to the table?" The gamblers were just very different gamblers to what I know now. And I think I kind of lived in a little bubble there. Our Middle Eastern clients were extremely boisterous, generous, spontaneous. They weren't afraid of the game. They played and they wanted to win not for profit. Money wasn't certainly an issue to any of them, but for status, for the feeling of being in power and control of the game, and high stakes games, hundreds of thousands of pounds going for the tables, a lot of it in cash too. So very interesting times to be a croupier. And then I also got to know the nuances of Middle Eastern culture from the compliance perspective. A few years later, I was appointed to be one of the people who would establish due diligence processes in Rank, and that was in Park Tower Casino, Mayfair. That was also a very, very different world to what we know here in UK in terms of conducting AML checks, safer gambling checks, due diligence, okay? Also recognized by the Gambling Commission when they came to visit that, the investigations that we held on these customers required a lot more knowledge on the nuances in economic processes within different jurisdictions. So different in Dubai, different in Qatar, different in Saudi. It was hard to profile customers for AML, for instance. Okay, there was a lot of cash that they operated with. It was very difficult to conduct open source investigations on some of the customers in those different jurisdictions. We had some crazy stories where, we had a customer who would have a number of boats in Qatar, and he was essentially a fisherman, and he employed fishermen who would go out to sea and fish and bring it to the market on shore, and they'll get paid in cash. And there was a very little evidence of proving whether this activity was definitely connected to those cash transactions that we could see in bank statements, etc. I remember taking satellite pictures of his boats and registration numbers online gambling to be able to prove that in fact what he was telling us was the truth, and then try and link that to those cash transactions on his bank statements, etc. So it was a very, very different process in evidencing that, let's say anti-money laundering checks led to a conclusion that the money came from legitimate sources. So essentially, I have learned a lot on when it comes to AML, for instance, that you really need to understand the country in which you perform those checks and how economy works there, and how business works there.
I suppose at the risk of the UKGC paying me a visit, I've got to admit that I'm loving these premier first-hand stories, because you've clearly, if you pardon the pun, been dealing with some big fish. Oh, yeah, as you called it yourself, crazy days, and I suspect, and we will continue the walk through your gambling career, if I may continue down that path. But I would suspect that the times have changed, because then you moved on to Ritz Hotel, having lived in London myself for quite a while. I'm picturing that opulent, top-notch hotel down in the city centre, and you were brought in to effectively fix the Ritz's AML function and those processes, because they happen to have been under special measures imposed on them by the UKGC. So I'm not going to ask you, for obvious reasons, to disclose anything confidential, but what did that process actually entail? Dealing with some more big fish?
There was an incredibly difficult task that they were given to complete. As you may suspect, probably 100% of the business that Ritz, a club, effectively conducted was with ultra high net worth individuals, and very few of them. A loss of a single customer could mean a lot to the revenue, I think, for them. And yes, you delved in terms of anti-money laundering checks, deep dive into each customer's business and personal dealings, reputation, adverse media, etc. So I was brought in through word of mouth to help with those tasks, trying to remediate, on the deficiencies in the AML and safer gambling program from to date that they were facing, specifically AML. So I was given a task of looking after the files of the top 250 customers at the Ritz, making sure they're watertight, and that we know everything we could about these customers and their funds. And that was incredibly difficult. To be fair, I don't really remember that much from the actual special measures and what special measures they were put under. I don't believe there were any licensing conditions that were enforced on them. But we certainly, what happened with the Ritz was they had to increase their level of compliance staff. I think tripled within months. We had 3 or 4 months to fix the deficiencies that were identified by the Gambling Commission. Essentially, after 3 or 4 months, they came and they visited again, and it was a very detailed dive into our major customers at the Ritz. Very detailed scrutiny into who they were and how much we knew about them. Certainly. Yes, and then we were all signed off by the commission. It all went well. That's all really I can say about that experience with the Ritz, but certainly a very incredibly difficult task of satisfying the commission's standards and money laundering regulations to ensure that all the funds were legitimate and our customers were also legitimate. So yes, that's all I can say really, but yeah.
I will certainly not probe any further. I might have hung up my law practicing boots, but I still appreciate the need for confidentiality, and really well done on having de-risked Ritz's casino operations. Fast forward to November 20, I believe it was. You joined Fitzdares, your current employer at the moment. You're their group compliance director, covering a variety of issues, but the focus is on making sure that things are at hand and done sustainably and safely. And perhaps for those, it's very unlikely that people wouldn't have heard about Fitzdares, but from your perspective, as their compliance officer, if I may ask, what is Fitzdares' USP? Because quite frankly, there are quite a few. Gambling businesses out there, in particular in the UK. So what makes Fitzdares different?
I believe, Fitzdares wants to be seen, and ultimately it wants to create an environment for customers where we are the entertainment, a part of the entertainment industry, not just a sports book and the casino. Fitzdares is extremely passionate about sports and everybody to the core. And we are a small team of 40 odd employees, extremely passionate about what they do in the sports and about Fitzdares. And this really resonates with our customers. When I think my appeal to Fitzdares, and I think what attracted Fitzdares to me as well, is that they essentially wanted to provide a white glove service to all of its customers. And they the USB and the company ethos is to foster long-term relationships with customers and to provide a tailored and personal touch in communicating with them, in looking after them throughout the business relationship. So it's a strange business model, because we want to be also still seen as boutique, but also at the same time we have now opened up to, I should say, mass market. So we introduced an app a few years back, and therefore we opened ourselves up to all consumers out there. When we first were established, we existed essentially through word of mouth, and we're just a small group of customers who brought other customers, friends and family members, etc. So that resembled the Ritz a little bit, and the Mayfair casino experience that I had in Land-based. Okay, in Land-based, in Mayfair, all of your customers. You really, and you invest in that, in fostering these relationships. You know whom is married to whom, and what are the names of the children, and it's important to you, and it's important to those clients too. So this is why I think this is the USB of Fitzdares for sure, and this is why I think we found each other, and we were essentially a fit. As soon as I entered my first interviews with Fitzdares, I knew that this is a company I wanted to work for.
From the sound of it, and I'm not being cynical, a match made in heaven. So congratulations again. And hopefully it's a nice segue into my next question, because with your experience, you might be the perfect person, the perfect match, if you pardon the pun, for discussing the relationship between online industry and its land-based, or if you will, offline, rather, counterpart. So I get to hear a lot, especially here in the States, where I've been for a little over 2 years by now, about cannibalization, and that it will be the end of the land. It would be the end of casino resorts in the event more than 7.5 US states were to regulate online casino. And I appreciate the UK market is very different, but would it be, in your experience, and of course feel free to disagree, in your experience, would it be fair to say that as opposed to cannibalizing on one another, there's been a healthy rivalry between the two sides of the casino industry? Or am I getting it wrong?
That's a very interesting question, and there are possible different outcomes to that. I comparing to UK players, I know that US players are slightly different. So let me go this way. There are some or majority of land-based players that will never enter the online space. They need the ambience, the hospitality, the environment of land-based casino. It's a very different experience the land-based casinos provide, and this is the experience that they want, they need. The social players are the very serious players who enjoy live gaming, and on the other side as well, there are also a lot of new players who will never enter, the foot will never enter into a land-based setting. And but again, it depends what the player needs from the gambling experience. So the online players in UK, I guess, I suppose here, that those who like to benefit from casino promotions and promotions they get on onboarding, welcome offers, bonuses, etc. They want to receive smaller bonuses, but on regular basis, for instance. And then you have land-based casinos and customers who will rely on their own more tailored way of being incentivized by land-based casinos. Essentially, it comes down to, I think, to the player what he wants. The online space provides more product and is more accessible. It's less expensive, I suppose. So, there will be ultimately differences between the players, and this will determine whether they will enter the online or land-based casino space. Land-based casinos, casinos specifically in London, I think they still can be quite intimidating for a younger audience. Therefore, they will choose to play online and on their own in less social environment. So I don't really see in UK, we're not particularly worried about losing our business to land-based casinos, and I don't think land-based casinos are worried about that either.
I would agree with that. Talking about intimidating, if I may pick that out while moving on to my next question. Now, 2 words, and there should be dramatic music in the background. There won't be, don't worry. This is a serious program, but the white paper. The UK, needless to say, is going through rather what might turn out to be rather dramatic changes in the regulatory landscape, especially, I would guess, on the online side of things. So what would be your take on that whole process and how, in your view, it might impact the industry going forward?
Well, yes, so many conversations about the white paper. Of course, I'm glad we're going through the review. Of course, it needs to be addressed. The fact that online space is not equal to the land-based one, and due to its technological advances, a change in regulation needs to happen and is probably well overdue. I think the shared view within the industry, both industry and the consumers, that, we certainly worry about whether the policy is going to be actually productive in combating problem gambling or not. Okay, so there's questions around, is the issue of affordability really effective in meeting that objective, or is safer gambling a public health problem, So I certainly worry, and I know that a lot of my peers and the consumers worry about the frictionless checks, and whether they're actually going to be frictionless affordability checks. And whether affordability on its own is the answer to all our concerns and questions. I certainly wouldn't want our consumers to be under any impression that if we introduce the frictionless checks, that customers will never be asked for extra documentation, or they'll never be asked for extra information, because that's certainly not true. So again, the devil is in the detail, and I know that, and I think everybody agrees that previously over the years, we felt like the Gambling Commission and their policy was divorced from reality. So certain requirements that were put upon us were were just impossible for us to implement. So it's going to be extremely important that whatever they introduce, they will test it first for its effectiveness and whether we can actually implement those technological changes, because technology will be required. And it takes a long time for an operator to introduce new technology, and also for the consumer mindset to change. And we need those consumers on board. So I think the Commission and the government need to put some efforts into consumer outreach and education, making sure that they know exactly what our new powers as operators are and requirements and why, and give us some time to test effectiveness of those changes, to make sure that we actually achieve them. We should all be a very costly exercise for every operator, and costly in the sense of introduction of new technology, but also, affordability checks and maybe lowering the minimum stakes in casino. It will affect revenue greatly for both for the online industry. So a balance again is needed. We might be facing new government this year, and I worry about further delays in this conversation. We're sort of in a state of limbo that's not good for anyone. So it's a very open-ended question still, unfortunately.
Indeed, let's see what Sir Keir and his gang, otherwise known as the next UK cabinet, might think about this whole shebang. But then, going back to what you just said, we get to hear all these buzzwords, for want of better expression: frictionless checks, affordability. So I suppose, if I may ask a potentially controversial and certainly perennial question, when it comes to safer gambling, do you believe that the industry is doing enough already, or do we need to step up further?
I think the industry is doing a lot, and not sure what the public perception is at the moment, because we only ever hear about the fines and the bad probes that happen to operators and how they fail they safer gambling or anti-money laundering controls. As I said, it's an extremely difficult task to design a process in which you are effective in combating problem gambling. The amount of information you need to have on a person to be able to make the assessment accurate is it's unbelievable. And people don't remain the same, they change throughout the journey with you. And also the question of, obviously, if the customer you had was exclusive to you and they were with you from the very start to the very end, and you can just very nicely observe the change in their behavior and then pick out markers of harm that maybe would indicate a problem with gambling or experiencing harm. But customers having 5, 6, 7, 10 accounts, and being with you for a fraction of their gambling time, it's hard to understand whether they are now at the point where things are going wrong for them. And we certainly, I go to a lot of conferences and seminars, and when I hear what other operators are doing and I see what Fitzdare is doing into trying and combat problem gambling and create a safe environment, it's an enormous amount of work and money and investment, and the multiple suppliers we work with, and the research that we read and evaluate. So I think we feel like we're doing enough, but whether we're effective or not, it's just, it proves itself in the statistics and, the complaints from customers. Certainly customers have huge expectations when it comes to us making sure they are protected, and that's evident now. The communication we receive from some of them now is very different to what it was years back. They're very educated in what we're meant to be doing to making sure that they will create a safe environment, and certainly they will let us know if they feel we failed them. But compared to what was 10, 15 years ago, we're doing a hell of a lot. But whether that's the end of the journey, I don't know.
I believe that is very fair. Perhaps fewer satellite pictures of fishermen's nets, but certainly much more data-driven analytics. Talking about variety, and thank you very much for all your views on the UK. Definitely critically important for the future, global future of this industry. But I believe that Fitzdare also currently present in the good old province of Ontario and in Canada. So again, from your perspective of a compliance guru, if you will, what would be your take before we hit the home straight of this podcast? What would be your view on the, what I would call a phenomenal rise of Ontario's as one of the leading North American markets, that even a lot of the US markets, in my perspective, should envy them, what they've achieved?
Well, yes. Our presence, Fitzdares' presence in Ontario, it's infancy still. I feel like we still have a lot to learn about our competitors there and about our customers. I certainly see the differences between UK and Canadian customers, the way they react to, let's say, safer gambling communication or AML checks. It's a very different setup with IGO as well, where IGO essentially they dictate and prescribe to us on how we are to meet our requirements around anti-money laundering and safer gambling. Safer gambling is still at its infancy as well, and that conversation around how we protect the players there. It's not as broad as the one in UK here. To be honest, Martin, it's still quite hard for me to comment on Ontario in a way that maybe it would be of value. I feel like Fitzdares will still need a bit more time there to form an opinion on what that market means to us, but we have high hopes for it, and we know the Canadians are passionate about betting and sports, and we definitely see potential, and there's definitely an appetite to stick to that jurisdiction, and we think Fitzdares can provide something very unique there that will make us different from other operators. However, there's still quite a lot we want to learn about our customers there. We don't know.
Now, your comments have certainly been of value, because I suppose we're all, throughout our careers, on already, especially in this industry, steep learning curve about individual jurisdictions. And yes, the Canadians love their hockey, although this is a US team. So I shall leave it here on the table. Ladies and gentlemen, before I give Emilia 60 seconds to convey her key messages, shine even more, cement her future place in the Gambling Hall of Fame, perhaps to wrap it up, normally I ask questions about sport, but today I've decided to spice that up a little bit. So, random question. I've used to live in the UK for quite a while, and you've clearly lived in the UK for quite a while. So, would you happen to have a favorite member of the royal family? Mine used to be Prince Harry, but then he met who, so he's no longer top of the ranking. But would you have one? Oh, you don't really care that much for them?
Is that bad if I was to say that I don't really? But I guess I would have to maybe not have a full-time job to be able to follow all the news about royal family and the various events and relationship. But yeah, no, I don't have anyone. I suppose my mum was in love with Lady Diana, and I still remember the day of the accident, and we were in this jewelry shop with my mom with a tiny TV screen, and my mom cried as she was buying this new ring for herself. She was, for me, she was an icon of elegance, and her fashion sense was amazing, and she just always looked so glamorous and beautiful. And I guess for that reason, I hold certain sentiment for her. But no, I don't really follow a royal family, and I don't know that much about them, which is maybe a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably great for your mental sanity, but unlike my silly comments about Prince Harry, thanks for the very passionate answer. Then now on an even more serious note, your 60 seconds, please, to convey your key messages to the audience.
Oh God. Okay. 60 seconds. Okay, give me some more direction in terms of compliance, or sorry,
it could be anything. Let's say about the future of Fitzdares in the UK market while embedding the white paper outcome.
Maybe something to the industry. 60 seconds of a message. Well, I am, maybe, I don't know if this is a great message, but I'm very passionate about anti-money laundering. I think probably more so than safer gambling, although both go hand in hand. The conversation around white paper seemed to be taking a lot of space in terms of, when it comes to affordability and safer gambling. And I have a slight concern that maybe AML is getting lost in there somewhere. I think as an industry now in the UK and as operators, we need to make sure and be careful, that we still remember anti-money laundering checks are so crucial for the business and for any business. And, the implementation of affordability checks or depositing limits for customers, which may result as part of this process. We need to make sure that our AML processes, our AML thresholds are still effective, and that we're not forgetting about that part of compliance. Something that I keep reminding myself all the time. I think Fitzdares, our entire ethos, compliance is definitely ingrained in the DNA of Fitzdares, and we are working towards sustainable player metric as a business together, not as compliance only. Everybody's KPIs are around that metric, and we just want to be seen as the entertainment industry again, and not so much as this draconian financial institution that now tells people how to play, or how much they can spend, or who they are, and asking invasive questions. We want to somehow, I don't know how we're going to achieve it, but we want to really create a frictionless way for our customers to enjoy gambling in a safe environment, and also stop sort of demonizing problem gambling too. We want to empower our customers to just be more aware of what's out there for them, and just to know that anytime they have any problem, they can give us a call or contact us, and where to go when they start to feel like maybe things are getting out of control a little bit. Because we know what we're selling. We're selling a dangerous product, but at the same time, there's no one's intention to exploit situations or our customers. We want to have fun betting on sports and in the casino with our clients. So I hope we can achieve that, and I hope, we achieving it now, but when the white paper comes through and the new legislation is enforced, I hope we can still be that operator who is friendly, and who is who listens, and who with whom you just want to stick to and have fun.
No doubt in my mind that you will get there, ladies and gentlemen. Emilia Kinderman, Group Compliance Director at Fitzdares. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Martin Lycka. This has been the latest episode of my Safe Bet Show, and I shall look forward to see you next time. We're out.